system. The PowerShell help system is extremely robust, and there's all sorts of useful information in there. But the thing is that the help system, like any other good software, is going to be updated or subject to updates. And so it's often a good idea to make sure that you're using the most recent version of the help system. It is so very vast and expansive, the information in there, that it really helps to have the most recent version. So let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to just type in get-help, and that'll bring up the information about the help system. And down here you can see that we have a command for updating help, update help. So let's go ahead and type that. Now what this will do is it'll check the internet, look for new help content, download it, and as you can see, we are updating and downloading and installing new content. Could take a while depending on the currency of your current version. And as you can see, there's a lot of stuff downloading here. So this is great. It's a good thing that we did this to make sure that we have the most recent information for the help system. Okay, now this isn't uncommon. You may get some information here telling you that some of the information, the help information for certain modules or operations didn't update, and that's okay. There's only a couple of responses here, so it looks like everything worked for the most part, and I'm not really sure what these error messages pertain to, but nothing to worry about. Looks like everything else updated just great, and that's how you update the PowerShell help system. In this video, I'll discuss PowerShell commandlets. To understand commandlets and PowerShell, it's important to draw some distinctions among terms. And some of these terms are terms that have widely accepted meanings in the computer world, but understanding how they relate to PowerShell and how they interrelate to each other forges the way to mastering PowerShell, because there are important relationships specific to learning PowerShell. The first term is commandlet, and these are the core commands of PowerShell, the native commands. Now, it's important to understand that it's okay to call PowerShell commandlets commands. There, I've said it. It might irk some developers and administrators to hear it, but command is a word that we all understand, and at the core of any command line interface is that pesky and pervasive first word, command. I'll try to stick to referring to them with their proper names, commandlets, but if I say PowerShell command, what I really mean is commandlet. But there's a more important distinction here, and that's that there's a very real difference between commandlets and functions. Functions are named sets of PowerShell commands, and their groups are sets of PowerShell commandlets, or commands, that perform repetitive and complex tasks. And it's safe to draw an analogy between functions as they relate to programming languages and functions as they relate to PowerShell. Same idea. Scripts are also sets of commands, and like functions, they perform repeating and often long, complex sets of tasks. And like functions, they're comprised of PowerShell commandlets. The primary distinction, and it's a really small one, is that scripts are often thought of as saved text files that can be launched at any time. And I really am splitting hairs here because functions are often created and saved as scripts. Finally, there are external commands, and it's worth putting them in the mix because while they can be relatively transparent in terms of working with PowerShell, they're not native PowerShell commands. They're not commandlets. They're common commands that you'd find in the DOS or Windows command prompt or in Linux shells. And in the sense that they're not native commands, not commandlets, they're simulated commands that build a bridge between DOS and PowerShell. They're there for compatibility and to ease the transition between other CLIs and PowerShell. In practical terms, what really sets PowerShell commandlets aside from their counterparts in other CLIs is that they're applications, actual .NET commands written in .NET languages like C#. And they have a very distinct, and it's relatively safe to say, rigid syntax. Verb, singular noun. And to be clear, that's any PowerShell commandlet that comes from Microsoft. You won't find any exceptions. There are about 100 approved verbs mandated by the PowerShell team, but beyond the team, you can't enforce it. If you create your own commandlet, you choose anything you like. Now, you've probably already guessed that this is a bad idea, and even if you do create your own commandlets, you should adhere to the PowerShell standard because it means stability and standardization, and those are good things. PowerShell commands have two primary forms, commandlet and function. And really all this means is that you can use single commandlets or group them as functions. Commandlets are written in compiled .NET languages like C#, and a function is a collection of PowerShell commandlets. And commandlets and functions are typically packages. As for the structure, get is by far the most common verb in PowerShell. Nouns are always singular, and always is highlighted there because while it's generally true that you don't have to guess and that the noun will be singular, there will be the odd rule violations, and if it's a non-PowerShell team commandlet, it could be anything. So I provided a couple of examples. It's get process, not get processes, get child item, not get child items, and so on. And this is kind of important. PowerShell is generally case insensitive when it comes to commandlets. And while that shouldn't shock anyone, it is noteworthy that you'll always see PowerShell commandlets represented in upper camel case or Pascal case. So each proper word beginning with the first letter capitalized. Don't let that deter you though, because when you work with PowerShell, you won't have to become friends with the shift key every time you type commandlets. And as I've said, the rules of commandlets can be violated, but you won't see it a lot, especially not if it's pure PowerShell from the In this video, I'll discuss the get command in Windows PowerShell. Okay, so let's start by clicking on the Windows button, right-click on Windows PowerShell, and choose Run as Administrator. Now, the most commonly used verb in the PowerShell command library is get, and as the name implies, get retrieves something. So for example, I can type this, get-command. Now I'm going to see a list of all the PowerShell functions, commandlets, and aliases. Aliases, of course, are simply another way of entering a command, and get-command has its own alias, GCM. Just run that to show you how that works, and it gives us the same results. Now, there are tons of PowerShell functions, commandlets, and aliases, and displaying all of them isn't really helpful if you're looking for something specific. So you can use wildcards to drill down. So for example, I'll just use GCM this time, A, and then an asterisk. And that will show us all the PowerShell commands beginning with A. We can retrieve help on get by using the command get help. So get-help and then get. Now, as you can see, there are plenty of functions and commandlets that use the verb get. And if we want to use get with a specific PowerShell feature, for example, to see the drives that PowerShell is using, you can use this command, get-ps for PowerShell drive. Now, notice how more than just local drives are displayed. There are actually registry entries, network drives, and even variables. And we can call up help for get-ps drive to understand what we're looking at. So for example, get-help, get-ps drive. And the help result tells us that there are different types of drives, from logical drives on the computer, drives exposed by PowerShell providers like certificate, function, and alias drives, and session-specific temporary drives and mapped network drives. Get is widely used, and it's a safe bet that as you work with PowerShell, you're going to want to use help to find the various get functions and commandlets in PowerShell.